I am so sorry for everything that has happened. Because in spite of what Mike says now, it is my fault. Hungry, and cold, and hunted.
Hello, Pumpkin Patch! I am the Asgardian Nightmare, Spooky Thor, here with Year 2 of Days of Halloween. Let's begin. Our first Halloween classic, or really only Halloween classic, is Tales from the Crypt, the original one from 1972. It's about a group of people in a tourist group who are touring some catacombs when they meet up with the Crypt Keeper and learn some stories, and turns out story time costs a little more than they bargained for. There's a story concerning a very demented version of the monkey's paw, Grand Moff Tarkin, Peter Cushing himself, just being a nice old guy who's just getting treated like shit by some really nasty rich people, and then something happens, and then he comes back and he gets a little bit more Tarkin-y. And of course there's a story about a killer Santa Claus, probably the best one until Bill Goldberg. No, that's not true at all. I just had to include a wrestling reference there.
Yowie wowie!
The underrated classic would be 2005's Land of the Dead, the official fourth movie of the Romero zombie movies. This one sees Dennis Hopper playing a crappy rich guy. There seems to be a sort of unintentional theme over there. Simon Baker, before he became a mentalist, he was just a guy just trying to make it out there. And there's Eugene Clark as Big Daddy, who, in my opinion, just might be the goat of all zombies, who teaches the zombies, hey, you can do all these functions like fire a gun or stab people, you know, all the basic motor functions you need in life. And Sean Roberts has a little cameo in it in this really weird time in between his one episode on Degrassi, The Next Generation, and when he played Wesker in those Resident Evil movies. Next is the double feature, the first one being the 2013 remake of Evil Dead, starring Jane Levy as Mia, a heroin addict who's taken to a cabin in the woods by her friends and her brother to get clean. They read from the book, of course, as they do, and the Deadites come out and all the blood and limbs fly. But not in a campy way like the original movies, but really, yeah, you could say that about all aspects of this movie. Absolutely, pretty much, yeah, zero camp. Character-wise, it's a nice bait and switch, because you think the main guy, David, played by Shiloh Fernandez, Mia's brother, will be the main character. In fact, he even kind of looks like Ash, and it's just him fighting his sister, who is currently being controlled by the Deadites. But actually, some stuff happens, and it turns out Mia ends up being the main heroine of the movie. In my opinion, I really think we had something there that could have turned Mia into the next great sort of horror protagonist, whether you want to use the term hero, final girl, whatever, that we really could have built on. But instead of doing that, Fede Alvarez just made Don't Breathe, also starring Jane Levy, which is really good. And also, this is just a timely reference because currently Don't Breathe 2 is in theaters. But, I mean, I guess you could watch the Don't Breathe movies as well. But I would highly, highly, highly recommend the Evil Dead remake in 2013. Honestly, I saw it like 13 times in theaters, which was like my record of watching a movie in theaters for like 3 years. So yes, it's that good. The second movie of my double feature is 2015's Tales of Halloween. Yes, another anthology movie. I swear these aren't themed, but this is just how the videos go, and we've got some anthology running through this video here. It came out in 2015 and had plenty of familiar faces that were timely just in movies and television in general for that time, and also really for people who would eventually make it through the second half of the 2010s being an important stuff. And considering I watched this movie in 2020, that's the only lens I can see it from. I don't know how many of these people were actually that big besides the names that I know I would have known in 2015. Does that make sense? I don't know. But also, I'm going to read a list of names out here on my phone, just full transparency, because Pumpkin Patch, you know damn well I didn't remember all those names. Madison Eisman, of the fame of The Rock's Jumanjis. Greg Grunberg from Heroes and like everything Kevin Smith. Barry Bostwick. Adrienne Curry playing herself. Lynn Shay of the Insidious movies and also who played the teacher in Nightmare on Elm Street. Mick Garris, the guy who wrote the story and screenplay of Hocus Pocus amongst numerous other projects in a wonderfully decorated horror career. Pollyanna McIntosh, formerly of The Walking Dead, Jadis, the one who kidnapped Rick and took him over to eventual movie land, spoiler alert. Felissa Rose of Sleepaway Camp fame and one of James's favorites. In fact, if James knew she was this far down this list, which he will when he sees this footage, he'll think I really buried the lead just putting her right in there. But, you know, just put a real main event name right in the mid-card. John Landis, Jose Pablo Cantillo, also of Walking Dead fame, Sam Witwer, the voice of Darth Maul in the Star Wars animated universe, Joe Dante, and finally Serena Vincent of Cabin Fever, Not Another Teen Movie, and Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fame. And those are just like all the names I knew. There's just so much more. Check out Tales of Halloween this season for some good anthology Halloween goodness, and see if there's any more names in there that you yourself recognize, and let us know on those socials, which you will see the links to at the end of this video. My horror and other media is the Blair Witch video game that came out in 2018. Now, I believe I put over how much of a big fan I am of the original movie and just the overall mythology of that world. For the most part, I feel like this game really delivered. And this is not to be confused with the trilogy of PC games that came out in 2000 made by the people who made the game Nocturne that you may have heard of. And really those games felt way more like a spiritual successor sequel to the Nocturne games more than, you know, a Blair Witch game. But I can tell you for certainty that this game right here that came out in 2018 for all the consoles, this one is absolutely a true Blair Witch game. It takes place in 1996, 2 years after the original movie took place, and you play as Ellis, a sort of detective, I would say, and him, along with his emotional support dog Bullet, go to the Black Hills Forest as a favor to his friend Sheriff Lanning of Burkittsville to assist in the case of a missing little boy. There's brewing hysteria because anytime someone goes missing, especially a child in Burkittsville, there's always a big ol' mass hysteria thing going on where everybody immediately jumps to it being the Blair Witch. So Ellis and Bullet go into the woods to search for the boy, and Ellis has PTSD, so what follows is a sort of part psychological thriller and mystery going on where weird things start happening, and the question is the Blair Witch messing with Ellis? Is it his PTSD acting up? Is it both? The scariest part for me was to having a lovable pup like Bullet over here in these dangerous woods with me, where a whole lot of bad things can happen, and I was more just worried about the dog than anything. Other than that, it was just really cool to be able to use videotapes and a camcorder to gather clues and also even somehow manage to affect the environment. Those were concepts that were kind of introduced in the second movie, Book of Shadows, but ended up being executed way better. But this time there's no old school Nickelback on the soundtrack. Yes, there was Nickelback on the Blair Witch 2 soundtrack. Look it up. For the general horror fan, there's probably better games out there, which makes it seem like I'm just completely burying this game after just being like, yeah, it's good stuff. But really, at this point, it should be at a reduced price if you're not looking to fork over a whole $60 for a nice, good video game thrill. And also, it's free on the Xbox Game Pass subscription service right now. So, but if you're a hardcore Blair Witch fan, I absolutely recommend this game 100% to you because it's a sort of new experience, but also stays faithful to a lot of the things introduced in the previous movies in a neat and more interactive way. So pop the game in, enjoy a stroll through the Black Hills Forest, and if you find yourself in a cabin, just go straight to the corner and don't look away from that corner.
Yowie wowie!
So that's it, Pumpkin Patch. Those were my picks for this year's Days of Halloween. Let us know what you thought. Click or treat. That means like, share, subscribe, stalk us on all the socials. You know the drill. So with that being said, I'm the Asgardian Nightmare Spooky Thor, and you've been riding with the Fall Horsemen, where Halloween lives and fall is forever. But I promise you, this is definitely my horror and other media is the Blair Witch game. But and now that whole flippin' thing about it stopping got me all messed up. In control of the Deadites mythology of that universe, I'm a big fan of What on Earth? If anybody's ever really heard of those.
Yowie wowie!